Hello there, welcome to ITV News Meridian and what's been the biggest day of strike action in a decade.
Yes, classrooms left half empty as teachers in the Thames Valley join rallies to demand more pay.
Teachers can't continue as it is with the pay and the lack of funding for our schools.
Well, the strikes have led to familiar scenes across the region, a return to homeschooling as families were left to make alternative arrangements.
The impact is on us as a family trying to help them cope with studying at home, but really they need to be kind of in the school system where everything's kind of, a bit more ordered.
Well, it's all enough to make you want a holiday, but with prices going up, are there still deals to be found? We'll have some tips that could help.
And join me at the museum, which quite literally is collecting dust as part of a mosaic makeover with a truly Herculean effort.
Good evening. Teachers in the Thames Valley were among thousands of workers who joined picket lines and rallies in the biggest day of industrial action in a decade.
On what's being called Walkout Wednesday, they have been calling for a pay rise to match the cost of living. But the government says that would only help fuel inflation.
Well, it's meant many schools in the region had to partially or completely close. Wesley Smith has been at the picket lines for us.
It was no ordinary school run at Redlands Primary in Reading this morning. Members of the National Education Union on strike, saying they're at the end of their tether over pay and conditions.
We've not had pay rises in so long, and those that have been offered have been unfunded. So unfunded means that the school has to pay it out of their existing budget.
I've come out here just to offer my support to my team. This decision they haven't taken lightly. It's been a tough call for them. These are a bunch of dedicated professionals who do a fantastic job on a daily basis.
Here at Windmill Primary at Headington in Oxford, around half the classrooms stayed empty. Others, like this maths class, went ahead as scheduled because, unlike some places, the head was given notice about which staff members would strike.
The only way you do get your voice outside sometimes, I'm afraid, is to have to put your head above the parapet and take action. And it shouldn't be like that. We should be able to sit down, talk to a government, and they should listen.
All the parents we spoke to here also said they supported the strike.
The schools are being critically underfunded by this government, but have been for a long time.
I am in full support of the teachers.
It's entirely justified. The system is being broken. It's completely underfunded.
Elsewhere, though, some schools closed altogether, and the impact was felt by pupils like Aurora and her siblings and their parents.
They've been trying to sort of cope with studying at home, but really they need to be kind of in the school system where everything's kind of, a bit more ordered.
On a day of multiple industrial action, people in Oxford city centre had mixed views about the teachers' strike.
I'm an ex-teacher myself. I do feel sorry for them. I think they should get more pay, but I don't think striking is helping the children.
I support them going on strike. I mean, they have to get their point of view out there.
It's been a long time since they've actually had an increase, so good luck to them.
At lunchtime, thousands went on the march.
This is the first time many of these teachers will have gone on strike or indeed come on a march like this. But there's a great sense of anger and determination to see this through.
We've got another day of action planned on the 2nd of March. That gives the government a long time in which to get together with our union leaders and to negotiate a settlement.
The average classroom teacher is on £39,500. The independent pay review body recommended 5% for experienced teachers and 8.9% for new teachers. There's also progression pay within those salary bands as well. So 40% of classroom teachers will actually be getting pay rises up to 15.9% this year.
But those words were not having an impact on strikers today. They say they'll strike again next month unless there's a change of heart. Wesley Smith, ITV News, Oxford.
Our social affairs correspondent Christine Alsford joins us now. Christine, as we heard Wesley say, there are more strikes on the way unless this is resolved.
Yes, indeed. The next ones in our region are actually scheduled for March the 2nd, March the 15th and March the 16th. So there is quite a gap, which means there is time for a compromise to be reached.
And in terms of education, it's not just schools that have seen staff walk out today.
No, we also saw the beginning of university staff taking action. That's with the UCU union. That's a long-running dispute over pay and conditions. And that disruption is at up to 150 universities and involved 18 days of walkouts between now and the break-up for the Easter holidays. So potentially lots of disruption there. We've been speaking to those at the University of Reading about what it might mean for them.
It is just difficult as it is directly affecting our studies, and I think we also pay so much for our education that it is quite impactful for us.
It affects the quality of study and learning process.
It hasn't really affected me, luckily, but a lot of my housemates are affected, and I think it's really going to disrupt them.
Previously, we've only had very limited numbers of staff going on strike, so the impact on students has been quite restricted. We have a well-worn process now whereby students who are missing lectures can report that online and the classes are rescheduled.
But of course, with summer exams just around the corner, it is a worrying time for students and also potentially reignites that whole debate, of course, of value for money for those £9,250 a year tuition fees.
Christine, I think we'll be speaking again very soon. Thank you very much.
Well, let's cross over to Westminster now and our political correspondent Phil Hornby. Phil, we've got a little over a month until that next strike date by the teachers here in the south. Is the government likely to budge before then and resolve the issue?
Well, you're right, Matt. As Christine said, there is time for talking. But at the moment, the government show no sign of budging. We heard from the Education Secretary that she thinks most teachers are getting a pretty decent pay rise. And that point was made again in the House of Commons here by the Prime Minister today.
We've actually given teachers the highest pay rise in 30 years. It includes a 9% pay rise for newly qualified teachers and record investment in their training and development. I am clear that our children's education is precious and they deserve to be in school today being taught.
And Phil, teachers not the only people striking today.
Now, you can say that again. This was the scene at Newbury today. There's been another train strike today. There'll be another one on Friday, as well as the train strikes, of course. We've got health workers, nurses, ambulance drivers. We've got border force people, all sorts of public sector workers on strike at the moment. And that led to this angry exchange at Prime Minister's questions today.
While he sides with extremist protesters and union bosses, we stand up for hard-working Britons and school children.
After 13 years in power, trying to blame the Labour Party for his failure to sort out the strikes it's rank pathetic.
So there you have it. It is a winter of discontent for people in the Thames Valley, and with no sign of these strikes getting settled, that might well turn into a spring of discontent.
OK, Phil, for the time being, thank you.
In other news, a drunk driver who crashed into an ambulance in Reading has been jailed for 5 years. Baldesh Resni was more than 3 times over the limit when he hit the patient transport vehicle on Monday. The 44-year-old was also uninsured and disqualified from driving.
The excavation of 2 tunnels for the high-speed 2 rail line under the Chilterns has reached the halfway point. Machines have spent the last 18 months digging out 5 miles of tunnels, with 5 miles still to go, between the M25 and South Heath in Buckinghamshire.
The charity in Fleet has now delivered 100,000 kilos of aid to help dogs and cats in Ukraine that have been caught up in the conflict. Dogs and Homes Rescue began its food missions last March. The charity says many shelters are struggling and are without power due to heavy shelling. It's now launched its winter campaign for donations with drop-off points in Farnham, Camberley and Wokingham.
Now you're watching ITV News Meridian in the Thames Valley. Still plenty to come on the programme this evening.
We'll be heading to a Roman palace where they've literally been collecting dust.
And have you spotted the green comet in the skies over the Thames Valley yet? If not, I'll be back later with details of how and when you might be able to see it.
More news from us across the region, of course, on our website, itv.com/meridian's the address. You can call us 0808 1010 095 as ever is the number, and you can follow us online on Facebook, Twitter and on Instagram.
The The mother of a woman from Chichester who was shot dead along with her 2 daughters by her partner is calling on the government to overhaul gun licensing laws. Campaign groups say the system is broken and are calling for more stringent checks on gun owners.
Kelly Fitzgibbons and her daughters died in March 2020. The inquest into their deaths heard Robert Needham had lied on his shotgun application. Chloe Oliver reports.
An inquest last year found Kelly Fitzgibbons and her 2 daughters, Ava and Lexi, were shot dead in Woodmancote near Chichester by their father and husband, Rob Needham, before he turned the gun on himself. Despite previous bouts of depression, he was granted a licence. Kelly's family in Eastbourne told me changes are urgently needed before more tragedies happen.
There is a really good chance that Kelly and the girls would still be alive if Rob had not been given his gun licence. He was even allowed to upgrade from a shotgun to a firearms licence, and he purchased the gun he used to kill the family only 9 days before he killed them. And by upgrading to a firearm, he was able to shoot them all without having to reload.
Sussex Police have said changes to the process had come into force in the past year, making it more difficult to obtain a firearms licence. It's incidents like this, which is why the Gun Control Network, a group of families, lawyers and academics, are calling on the government for a more rigorous system. Amongst the things they're calling for, an annual review of licences instead of the current 5 years. They want independent oversight as opposed to it being down to each individual police force, and they're calling for a national hotline to record concerns.
There are cracks in the system. People are falling through the loopholes. People who no longer should have guns are keeping them. People who shouldn't get them are being given them because they lie during the licensing process. And tragedy can often result, and we've seen far too many of these tragedies recently.
There are 1.3 million licensed shotguns in the UK and 500,000 firearms. Most of these are used for sport.
You have to remember that you have to balance any firearms controls with the fact that shooting is an incredibly popular sport. It's one where we represent in the Olympics and Commonwealth, and hundreds of thousands of people enjoy shooting.
In a statement, the Home Office said, "The UK has some of the strictest gun laws in the world, but we keep them under constant review to ensure those with legal access to firearms use them safely and to ensure criminals do not gain access to firearms. That is why we have brought in new statutory guidance for firearms licensing, which means police must carry out robust checks on public safety grounds and ensure that they are consistently applied by all police forces." As the Home Office continues its review, families are worried more lives could be lost if scrutiny isn't increased. Chloe Oliver, ITV News.
Now the ITV Evening News continues at 6:30. More coverage, of course, on our top story tonight, the strikes today. With the look ahead to their programme, here's Mary Nightingale.
Coming up on the programme, we assess the impact of the largest mass strike in decades.
Solidarity forever and the union.
Hundreds of thousands of workers walked out, all demanding pay rises the government says it simply can't afford. Many schools were forced to shut and almost no trains ran today. We will have the very latest on all the disruption across the country. Also ahead, find out which high street coffee chain has 10 times more caffeine in a cappuccino than one of its rivals. And why the days of sharing your Netflix password could be coming to an end. And do join me for those stories and more at 6:30.
Mary, thank you. Now, developers say it'll be the most sustainable new neighbourhood in the country, timber built and powered by renewable energy.
Yes, the Phoenix project would be surrounded by the green hills of the South Downs National Park and built on a former industrial estate. Those behind it say it's a trailblazing model for how the UK might meet its net zero goal. But will the scheme get off the ground? With more, here's Malcolm Shaw.
The Phoenix industrial estate has lain mostly derelict for many years, but now the huge brownfield site is earmarked for a groundbreaking development. 700 homes clustered around shared courtyards and community facilities. The team behind the plan believe it can be the most sustainable new neighbourhood in the UK.
The things that you'll see here will be lots of people walking and cycling, 100% renewable energy. It's going to be built largely in timber. Some of that timber will come from Sussex woodland. It's going to be built largely by local people, apprenticeships and so on, building a new industry effectively in green construction.
This was once a bustling hive of industry, an ironworks, its beating heart. Sarah Bayliss is a local writer and historian. She believes the Phoenix can rise again.
We need more people to live in Lewes. This is a brownfield site. It's wasted. We shouldn't be building on fields in the countryside. We should be building on an available site that's got infrastructure already. It will be an asset.
In 2014, fire destroyed a theatre and arts centre on the site. The new development relies on timber-framed construction, with some buildings 5 stories high. Safety is a prime consideration.
We've got some of the world's best fire consultants that are a key part of our team, and we take those considerations really seriously, and we do everything that is required and necessary and right to make sure the buildings are safe.
When Lewes flooded in the year 2000, the industrial estate was left under several feet of water. This project, costing around £370 million, will see £15 million spent on new flood defences. Malcolm Shaw, ITV News, Lewes.
Let's get some football. And while Southampton were busy on the pitch against Newcastle last night, deals were being done off it. Saints secured the signing of Nigerian striker Paul Anucha and paid a club record £22 million for Ghana winger Kamaldeen Sulemana.
The new signings will be key to Southampton's efforts to stay in the Premier League, while last night their EFL Cup run came to an end at Newcastle. Here's Sarah Gom.
Zero Accounting Software sponsors ITV Regional Sports Report.
All our focus now is on the Premier League and getting away from relegation. Everyone is raring to go. The post-match words of striker Che Adams, whose goal at St James's Park simply hadn't been enough to overcome Eddie Howe's seemingly unstoppable side. The scene on Tyneside had been set for a very special night. These Newcastle fans hadn't seen their side reach a cup final since 1999 and dared to believe their advantage wouldn't be easily overcome. Southampton's aim, to stay in the tie as long as possible. The reality, something quite different, conceding twice and cheaply early on, allowing the game to slip away. Some hope did come in the form of Adams' 25-yard strike. It ended Newcastle goalkeeper Nick Pope's run of 10 consecutive clean sheets, and he was later forced to draw upon that form, saving Adam Armstrong's second-half effort. None of this, though, enough to deny Newcastle their date at Wembley. And not even the dismissal of Bruno Guimaraes casting much of a cloud over their celebrations. So while Howe's men occupy the Premier League's 3rd spot, having lost only once in 20 games, Saints sit at the foot of the table. Cup distractions continue. They'll play Luton or Grimsby in the 5th round of the FA Cup later this month. There is, though, just one priority: survival in the top flight.
We just started so slowly, and everything we talked about, an aggressive start, about being positive, about being bold, and that, and then to just switch off on 2 occasions and stuff we talk about is really frustrating. But the reaction and how they go about it, and what they give me on a, you know, in terms of endeavour and everything, I can't fault them, and I am proud, of my team, but I can't keep being proud of the reaction and everything, because when we don't pick up the results that we have now, look, everything's down now to the league, and we have to make sure that we are, really, get the points that we need to stay in the division, because that's the be all and end all.
And with that, and only that in mind, Jones's team dust themselves down ahead of Saturday's clash at Brentford. Sarah Gom, ITV News.
Now, after what felt like the longest January ever, it seems more people are dreaming of a week in the sun. Online searches for summer flights are up 40% on last year, but so is the cost of a holiday. Prices for package deals are up a fifth.
Well, a travel agent in East Grinstead has told us packages and all-inclusive deals are still the most popular. Catherine Walker has more.
The winter cold gets many of us dreaming of summer getaways. But soaring costs for flights and hotels risk grounding people's plans.
I really do want to go to Japan, but Japan's just, the flight tickets like over like 1,000, so. And plus, energy levels are going up.
It's not ideal, obviously we've been locked up for a while before with COVID and now everyone wants to travel, but it's just too expensive.
I definitely think holidays feel like a luxury these days, but maybe they're supposed to be.
That's why we're going to the Hebrides.
Yeah.
Stay in Britain.
With package holidays already up 19% compared to last year, 2023 is forecast to be an expensive year for travel. But wherever you're going in the world, there are ways to keep costs down. First, check out your local travel agent. Professionals like Charmaine in East Grinstead can tell you the best deals from the south of England.
Here in the High Street is very much all-inclusive holidays. I think with the cost of living rise, people need to know what their budgets are going to be. So rather than book your holiday and then start saving up for your spending money, they like to have it pre-budgeted.
If you like to book things yourself, there's other ways to find bargains.
Hi Chelsea, lovely to meet you. So nice to meet you.
Chelsea is an expert in cheap travel hacks. We asked how she plans to make savings this summer.
My top tip is do not get lured in by cheap flights alone. Yes, they're great to get, but actually it's a one-off cost. You're much better looking at your daily costs, such as accommodation, and getting a good deal there. Because spending £20 more on a flight could be well worth it if you're going to save like £300 on your accommodation.
And what about families that are looking for package holidays?
For me, it's all about flexibility still, and there are websites that allow you to search for any destination. Then you use the filters to find what works for your budget.
So, whether you're after a city break or dreaming of a week in the sun, a little research and a lot of flexibility could be just the ticket. Catherine Walker, ITV News.
Be nice, wouldn't it? That's it. That's all I've got to say. It would be nice. Now, it is a truly Herculean task cleaning the 2,000-year-old mosaics at the remains of Britain's largest Roman home.
But the dust being collected at the Fishbourne Roman Palace in Chichester is itself being preserved. James Dunham has been to see the meticulous effort taking place.
Well, there are 29 incredible mosaics at the museum, and tasked with the important job is Ben. You've got this really key task to dust all of these precious artefacts. Is it quite a painstaking job?
Well, sometimes it can be, but I actually find it quite peaceful. It's just you and the mosaic, and you take the dust off, you take the dirt off, you check for damage, you check for water damage, and you check that the tesserae aren't coming loose and that the degradation is not more than we expect it to be, and you leave it as it is as best you can.
This mosaic, as indeed all of them, have a history behind them.
Yeah, so this mosaic is Cupid on a Dolphin. It was built in about AD 150 to be the dining room for this villa. And then you've got seahorses, sea panthers, scallop shells and vases.
The detail is pretty marvellous, I have to say. We'll leave you to it because I know you've got a lot of work to do. Thank you very much, Ben, for your time.
Cheers.
Well, joining me over here now is Rob, who is the curator of the museum. We're on a mosaic which is quite clearly not in its original form, but that's kind of emphasises the reason why the dust examination is so important.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And this floor probably hasn't been cleaned for about 4 months now. Ben did this last about 4 months ago, so it'll be cleaned again in about 2 months. Dust can damage the floors, and things live in the dust, and things will eat those things, and eventually you end up with a little ecosystem going on here.
So Rob, you've got an example there of some of the dust that you've collected so far. it doesn't look too great, I'll be honest.
It's very important dust indeed. This is one of many boxes, and the idea is we're building up an archive of dust. Plan is in future to be able to come back and see how things have changed year on year, see whether the amount of dust has changed, whether we've got more or less dust in different places, but also what's in it, what it's made up of, what's living in it. We'll even be checking it for tiny fragments of the mosaic tiles to see if we've got any very slow erosion going on, see if we've got any problems in store.
Well, hopefully there won't be too many of those in the coming years. Rob, thank you very much for your time this evening. So there you are, an archive of dust, a very unique approach to preserving history here.
James done that. I've got so many questions.
Yes. Have you ever been tempted to archive your dust?
No, but what is it? Skin cells?
Yeah.
Do you know what I'd
mostly.
be tempted to do? Say,
What?
oh, you missed a bit. Oh. Sorry. Pip's with us now.
So let's go from. I'm just actually looking at this desk. It could do with a washing. Let's go to. There's something worth seeing again in the sky tonight. Green comet. We can account for.
Yeah, green comet. Comets, of course, also made of dust and ice particles. Yes, the green comet is searing across our skies. It's very rare because it hasn't been seen for 50,000 years, back when the woolly mammoths were walking the land. So visible to us because it's about as close to us as it's going to get. Still 42 million kilometres away. It was actually spotted back in March last year, and it's been edging ever closer since. If you're wondering what you're looking for, then have a little look at this picture. This is from John and Jean. This was the skies over Chelsea a couple of nights ago. So it's that green, slightly fuzzy looking blob in the middle there. The green colour comes from the sun's rays reacting with chemicals around the comet itself.
So, Pip, how do we see this green splodge? Are conditions good?
Well, we will have some clear spells coming and going tonight, so you'll have to pick your time. But go outside, look north, allow yourself about 15 minutes for your eyes to adjust to the darkness. Find somewhere as dark as possible. Don't go looking at those phone screens in the lead up to looking for this comet. And also, although you can see it with the naked eye, best viewed through binoculars. So binoculars at the ready, and fingers crossed for some clear skies.
Right, that's the late shift sorted.
Yeah, in the car park.
I'm serious, be in the
Lovely.
car park. Let's get your full forecast now. Here's our Pip.
Feels like home, whatever the weather. Valent Boilers and Heat Pumps sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
Well, it certainly has been very quiet out there weather-wise today, and more of the same really through the next few days. The emphasis very much on dry conditions, some bright or sunny spells coming and going. And whilst it will be mild for a time, it does look as though something a little bit chillier could be on the way as we head into next week. But that is still a fair way off. And for now, we have high pressure very much in charge down towards the south, exerting its influence across our part of the world. And whilst we will see a couple of weather fronts drifting our way, they're not going to bring much in the way of rain, perhaps just a bit more cloud from time to time. And that will certainly be the case overnight tonight. So some clear skies around initially, hopefully some decent prospects for spotting that green comet. But as we head through the rest of this evening and tonight, we will start to see a little bit more cloud building from the west. A frost-free night for all of us though, and temperatures probably hovering between 4 and 6 Celsius in towns and cities, just a touch lower in some rural spots. Tomorrow then, a bit more cloud around than we've had today perhaps, and 1 or 2 showers possible, more especially out towards the west, but even these not coming too much for most of us. The emphasis on another dry day, and in the best of any brightness out of the breeze, it shouldn't feel too bad at all for the time of year, with temperatures for many up into double figures. High tides for tomorrow then for Southampton there just before 9 in the morning, just after 9:30 in the evening. And the settled conditions prevail overnight into Friday, so staying largely dry, a bit of cloud coming and going courtesy of another weak weather front. But Friday itself set to be quite a bright day, a bit more cloud, perhaps a little damp on Saturday, and thereafter brightening up again, but perhaps turning a little bit cooler.
Valent sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
That's it from us. In just a moment here, we've got the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale.
For now, though, thank you very much for watching. We will see you very soon. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.